Hello everyone, and welcome to Shopify Compass. If this is your first time here, a very big welcome to you. Shopify Compass is a learning platform built for you to take the guesswork out of entrepreneurship. And as you know, we host these every week on Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So just like right now, and we cover different topics that will help you launch and grow your Shopify store with more confidence. And for those of you who have joined us before, welcome back. It's great to see you, and see the chat is getting a little bit of a buzz going. So as you're hopping in, let us know your name, where you're tuning in from. As always, I'm here in Ottawa, Canada, and I will be your host today. My name is Sigute Zidikite. I'm on the partnerships team here at Shopify, working with educators and partners who truly know Shopify inside and out. And we also have a few Shopify team members in the chat today. So if you haven't already, please give some love to Chelsea and Kumal. They are great, and they'll be answering your questions throughout the chat, so throughout the presentation. So don't be shy, ask your questions, and anything related to the presentation, we'll save those. We have a live Q&A at the end, so we'll go through those, answer them in real time for you. And with that, I would love to introduce you to a very special guest who will be leading the workshop on sustaining the spike, how to grow beyond COVID-19. So very exciting topic. And our speaker is Adam Pearce. He is the CEO and founder at Blend Commerce, which is a UK-based Shopify agency that specializes in high growth merchants. So Adam is a seasoned digital marketer. He's striving to create the world's most supportive Shopify agency. And we love having him in the partner program. We're so excited to have his wisdom here today. So Adam, welcome and thank you.
Thanks, Agiti. Appreciate it. And hi, guys. Thanks very much for having me today. So just to kick off, really, I just want to kind of share with you a stat here. And I'm going to read it out loud because I want to just kind of see what your thoughts are. So typically, it costs 5 times as much to acquire than to retain a customer. So how does that sound to you? Now, I think, at the moment, in a time when we're all looking to grow our businesses, what it's important to do is think about this metric and how we can both grow and sustain that growth of a business. And with that in mind, what I'd like to do today is obviously continue Sigite's welcome to the Shopify Compass webinar. As Sigite mentioned, it is called Sustaining the Spike. Before we get started, I just want to tell you a little bit more about me, about where I'm from, and a little bit about what I've done within the Shopify space. So my name is Adam Pearce. I am the CEO and co-founder of Blend Commerce. We are a Shopify agency that's based in the UK, and predominantly we work with DTC brands that are focused on subscriptions. And really what I'm hoping to do today on this session is to really not only share some insights into what's been happening in terms of sales of Shopify merchants, like you guys tuning in, but also give you some of these practical solutions of how you can make the most of retaining this upsurge in sales. Obviously not in just 2020, but also as well going into 2021 as well, and also beyond. So what we'll do then is let's have a little look at what we're going to actually cover off today. And what I thought I would do really is when I was thinking about this webinar, I thought, look, what are the questions that we're being asked as an agency at the moment? And if I'm honest with you, when we talk about obviously what's happened during the COVID-19 period, the main sort of questions being asked is, look, who is actually seeing a sales spike? What are the verticals? Where is the sales spike actually coming from? With that as well, how do you actually assess your growth? What can we do as a Shopify merchant to see where this growth is, to assess where we are? And then obviously with that is that once we know that information, is that how do we then take that and turn it into something practical that we can actually then implement? So what I'm going to do is basically take each of these questions in part today. We are also going to be having a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. So if you do have any questions, please enter those into the chat, and the Shopify team will make sure that we can answer those just towards the end of the webinar. Okay, guys, so look, let's dive in. Now, when it comes to the first question here, in terms of where the sales spikes, what I wanted to do is actually share some stats with you, both from our partners here at Blend, but also some of our own, I guess, more anecdotal examples and some of the actual examples that we've experienced as a team here at Blend as well. And what I want you to do, first of all, is have a think about revenue and sales as a metric, as an idea. And I think, in the years that I've been kind of part of Shopify, I think we tend to have a bit of an obsession with revenue. And I don't think it's just Shopify, I think it's business more general, that when we think about revenue, we always think about acquiring that new customer. getting that new customer through the door, bringing that person onto our website. And look, this is important, but it's really important to think at the moment more specifically about where those sales are actually coming from. Now, just looking at the slide at the moment here, what you can see is that we've got a data set from our partners over at Klaviyo. And what you'll see here is that you can see from the start of the pandemic period, so roughly kind of, the end of March is when things really obviously started to change in the global environment. There's certainly been obviously this upsurge in sales. I guess we can all see that from the graph and this kind of upward trend. But when you look more closely, if you look at that dark green color there, what you can see is that growth is actually being driven by new sales, not repeat customers. And I think I'm honest with you that when we first saw this happening, we were pretty surprised, because in a time where obviously people are maybe a little bit sure about what's happening, you would maybe think that they would default to things that they know, things that they used before, businesses that they used before. But actually what's interesting is that people have actually been extending that trust out to new businesses they've maybe never interacted with before, and actually then gone with that and made purchases off the back of it. And I think, look, there's lots of kind of ideas you can go into the reasoning of this. The guys again over at Klaviyo have done a great job of thinking about this a little bit like sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the different needs that people have gone through. But I think it's just important to really note here overall that, look, there's that big upsurge in new business. And the question is that as Shopify store owners, what do we do with that? And going into kind of some of the latest data we've seen, around about 54% of all sales at the moment for Shopify merchants are coming from new customers opposed to existing ones. So if we kind of couple this, thinking about that stat that I shared with you right at the start, it's actually probably a bit more evident now about what I'm saying. Look, it's not only important to focus on those existing customers, but also on the new ones. And as those new ones become existing ones, and it's that relationship of, okay, new versus existing, that I'm going to focus in a little bit more on here. Now, you might be sitting here watching this saying, okay, well, look, that's all well and good, it's overall data, fine, but what about the actual verticals? And that's what I want to do here on this next slide. So if we kind of zoom in a little bit, I suppose, on the data, what we're looking at here are some of the verticals with the biggest spikes that we've seen. And what's interesting here is that if you look at these categories, beauty and cosmetics, health and fitness, toys and hobbies, home improvement, all of these verticals are about making us feel good, about making us feel better. And I suppose really, within the environment we've all been placed in, that kind of level of making ourselves feel better is something that, again, is going to be really important. And that kind of feel-good factor, I think, has been a really interesting part of obviously what's been happening with COVID-19 and the sort of the patterns in spending that people have been having. But I suppose also with this, let's again actually look at some even more specific examples that we've experienced here at Blend. Now, as a Shopify agency, we work with a range of different Shopify and Shopify Plus stores, but one of our biggest focus areas for the past 12 months has actually been looking at how we can help pet brands grow. Now, you're seeing the right thing here. It is 600% year-on-year growth. That's been the average growth rate for our pet brands year-on-year in June 2020. So, look, this is definitely an outlier in terms of overall growth. That is big. But I think if you just kind of, even just scan down the slide here in terms of the wording, what you're seeing here is that it's about spikes all around. We're seeing growth in a lot of different places, whether that's in revenue, in AOV, the actual number of customers coming through. And the guys at Shopify have done a great job of obviously sharing some of the really big success stories where you've even had merchants saying, look, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, we're seeing those levels of sales on, a Tuesday in April, which is, absolutely phenomenal. And I think, the point important for me to point here is, look, I know this hasn't been the case for every single Shopify store. I know there have certainly been challenges, but I think if you're sitting there and thinking, look, well, actually, that this hasn't happened to me, the one thing that unites us all, regardless of obviously whether we've seen this level of growth or if we haven't, is that it's what we need to do next. So either are we going to be looking to sustain this spike, or are we looking to generate this spike? And the opportunity is there. E-commerce is growing massively at the moment, exponential growth that you'll see. And it's about saying, what do we need to do personally next to actually either sustain this or actually tap into it. Now, when it comes to thinking about how do you actually assess your growth, we start thinking about metrics and analytics. And if I'm honest with you, look, I'm sure a lot of you are sitting there probably with sweaty palms thinking, oh man, analytics, it seems like a headache, metrics, data, all that stuff. But the important thing to do with data and metrics is always to break it down. And if you go and open up, Shopify admin and look at analytics, or if you go and open up Google Analytics, I get it. Look, it's pretty overbearing in terms of what you're going to see. But the great thing is that when it comes to actually metrics, you can break it down into a little bit of a more easier thing to do. Now, there's probably going to be a lot of you who are going to disagree with me here, and probably some of the agency guys out there, but hey, this is my opinion and it's what's worked for us guys, that when it comes to metrics and looking at growth, I would actually be a little bit controversial and say, look, focusing on these 4 key metrics that are on the screen at the moment. And if you look at these over the past 4 months, you're actually going to get a very good picture of where you're at. And right here, right now, that is the most important thing that we need to do as Shopify merchants. And I'm definitely going to be providing you a little bit later on with some of the strategies that you'll need to have an impact on obviously growing or sustaining the spike. But I think what we'll do first of all is let's take a little bit of a look at each of these metrics and help you be able to get a sense of where you're at with these kind of metrics that we're looking at. So I would say in my experience, customer lifetime value sometimes seems like something that is a little bit alien, can sometimes see like it's something that it is a little bit confusing. And the reality is, look, guys, it's not. It's definitely one of the most underused, but I would definitely say important metrics for when you're looking at your growth. And what I put on the screen here is actually a blog from Shopify. Hopefully, guys at Shopify, I don't know if you're able to pull this blog up, maybe share it in the chat. I think that would be super useful, because what this actually does is show you how to calculate CLV, or customer lifetime value. And if you actually look at this and you say, well, actually, my customer lifetime value has increased because, let's say, our average order value has increased, then it really does at that stage make it a very good thing to focus on how you're going to care for those customers, how you're going to nurture them, and how you're going to get them in for more sales further down the line. And, if you're using tools like Klaviyo or Loyalty Lion, what you'll be able to do is actually pick up this data from there directly without even having to calculate it. But as you'll see a bit later on, we've actually created something for you guys today that helps you calculate your CLV. And I'm going to be showing that just in a few moments. So let's think about revenue. And I think, like I mentioned towards the start of today's session, is that when it comes to revenue, I often feel that we get a little bit obsessed with that number. And if I'm honest with you, don't pay too much attention to those headline numbers. And, I'm sure we've all been standing there through Facebook, through Instagram, scrolling through, and, you've got a guy who's saying, look, I've got 6 figures, I've got 7 figures, and, there's a Ferrari rolling about in the background. But reality is, look, the overall number just isn't that important. If any of you out there are growing, have got a larger store or have been, on the Shopify platform for a while, I'm sure you'd agree with me to say that, when you look at revenue, it's about actually breaking it down and looking at the story that goes with each of those breakdowns. Now, on the screen at the moment, what I've done is I've included just a very small snapshot of the growth analysis tool that we prepared for you guys that you can get access for later. And what you can see here is that with each of those kind of sub-metrics, what we're doing is then we're asking a question in terms of revenue versus new versus returning. But then we're saying, well, what marketing was done to generate the new versus the returning revenue? And then you can ask another question. And that's what I mean about building your story. Understanding where that overall number comes from is helpful, but what's super helpful is understanding those kind of subcategories. And this is really where you're going to learn not only what's happened to your revenue, but also what to do next. And if I'm honest with you, and being super succinct, and you say, look, Adam, what is it I need to look at? Go ahead and look at that new versus returning revenue at the moment, because that is really going to be the jump off point for you to say, look, where do I need to focus? Am I seeing a lot of people that are new to me, in which case I need to focus on them? If it's majority of returning customers, I need to think about it more in that terms. And that's going to, of course, impact on your marketing. It's going to impact on your products. And also, of course, don't forget your customer service, because depending on the stage that your customer is at with you in their buying cycle, that is going to be different depending on obviously where you're at. Now, we've taken a very brief look at some of the metrics here, and of course, this isn't sufficient to be able to really kind of see where you are. But if you take a look at the screen right now, I've included a link here to blendcommerce.com/Shopify Compass. And what you'll be able to do here is actually download a growth assessment tool. And what this will do is that help you to pinpoint some of that data you'll need. And then it will give you some ideas on the understanding of your story of where you are now, and then what your next steps are. And just as a reminder as well, guys, I will make sure that we share this towards the end of the webinar, and we'll also pop it into the chat panel as well, just so you guys have got access to this to have to take a look at. So when we look to the next part then, and we're saying, okay, regardless of where we are in terms of growth, I think the point is we can all agree that, look, at the moment, e-commerce sales have rocketed. And I've mentioned that a few times already on the session. But what we need to do now is say, well, how do we tap into it? Or how do we sustain it? And although it kind of might sound a little bit cheesy and a little bit kind of catchphrasy, but retain and gain is kind of a fairly simple mantra that I definitely recommend that we all have a look at and think about as we go forward, and obviously think about what we're going to be doing next with our Shopify stores. Now, I've again sort of borrowed this slide again here, courtesy of my friends over at Klaviyo. And this is essentially a diagram of showing that customer lifecycle, which I'm sure we've all seen something similar to this and think about this within our business. And when it comes to this diagram, what we need to do at the moment actually here is focus on that big yellow chunk in that top left-hand corner, retention. Now, what I'm not saying here is that you don't need to focus on acquisition, fulfillment, conversion. Absolutely not. But what we do need to think about is that at the moment, we're seeing this new level of customer come in, this new customer to our store. So if they're new, we need to think about how are we going to get them to continue to spend. So we need to think about retention. And that's really what I want to focus in on now for the next part of today's presentation. Now, when it comes to retention, again, you'll probably get a theme here. I don't like to deal with kind of a big item. We need to break things down. And the important thing here with retention is to break it into 3 different steps of encourage, reward, and lock-in. And I'm going to start off by taking a look at the encourage part of retention. Now, when we talk about how to encourage retention, let's sort of just, again, go into a bit more detail here. What I'm talking about here is that if you think about your Shopify store like a brick and mortar store in your local high street, wherever you're in the world, when you first walk into a store, as soon as you walk in, you're going to get that friendly welcome from the sales assistant, hopefully. You're going to see what products they have. You're going to understand the kind of products that they sell at maybe different times of the year from their running around the store. And all of that is really, as a shopkeeper, as a shop owner, you're doing that because you want that customer to be a long-term customer. You want them to see you as a business they can rely on, and they can deal with you on a longer-term basis. And exactly the same thing needs to apply when we think about our Shopify stores, is that as soon as that person hits your store and are thinking about becoming a customer, are you showing those positive signals to that customer or to that potential customer that you are there for them? You are there to care for them. You are there and going to take them through on a longer term journey than just actually that initial, right, okay, great, with a sale, goodbye. And that's what we're going to take a look at with the examples here. Now, the first point that I wanted to show you is about collecting data. And I think one of the reasons that we need to think about collecting data is that it's about that personalized approach. So thinking back to that analogy again with the brick and mortar store, when you walk into a store, you get a welcome. How are you? Maybe someone asks your name, especially in a kind of coffee stop scenario. So when it comes to thinking about collecting data, I've actually shared an example on the screen of a recent type form that we built for one of our clients. Now, what this essentially does with this type form is one of a number of questions. We actually, from this type form, ask the client or ask the potential customer what kind of brands are they into, what are their size, what's the type of clothing they'd like to shop for. So what that means is that even before the point that we sent that first email to them, we are actually taking some data, and we've got data available to us that we can then use to tailor and give them a personalized welcome to the business. And the great thing is that when we use that with Typeform, we can sync that data with Klaviyo, and we can create something called a custom property. Now, what that custom property means is that, let's say, for example, I go and fill in this type form. I tell the guys that I'm interested in Canada Goose. I wear a size XL. In that welcome email, I can then send them only products in Canada Goose in the XL size they're available, and away we go. So if you think about that as of a comparison of maybe just a very plain, vanilla welcome flow, there's a much bigger impact there. It's much more personal. It's giving them products and showing them products they're interested in. And essentially there, we're not just personalizing with just saying, look, okay, we'll put their first name in it. That really isn't good enough. Customers are expecting a lot more. And if you can do that at the start with some type of quiz, either within your email service provider or even in type form, that is a fantastic way to start that encouragement process for when it comes down to encouraging retention. So I've referred to this a little bit already, and we're talking here about personalizing. And when we work with Shopify merchants at Blend, we always recommend using Klaviyo to manage their email marketing. And the reason that we do this is that not only does it give us a really great opportunity to collate data, but Klaviyo also does a heck of a lot of data collation that other email service providers don't. And I was saying, look, by far when it comes to retention, the welcome email flow is absolutely critical. If you don't have a welcome flow at the moment, you're 100% leaving cash on the table. And I know, again, that sounds like, a sort of, sales pitchy type of thing, but seriously, guys, if you don't have a welcome flow, after this webinar, go and set one up. It is by far the most important thing that you can do to welcome that person and get them in the mindset of being a lifelong or longer term potential customer. And I've included a couple of examples here from reallygoodemails.com, and I'll just drop that in as well, guys. Reallygoodemails.com is a fantastic resource to use if you need some inspiration for how to create your emails. But what it's worth me saying too is that when we think about actually using email marketing, particularly the welcome flow, some stores can actually generate up to 60% of their total email flow income from their welcome flow alone. So you can see what I'm saying here in terms of, okay, yes, it's important for the long term, but also from a short-term perspective as well, the welcome flow can be super important. Now, the last bullet point that I've included on this slide was me talking about email versus SMS. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but what I would say is that we've actually seen some absolutely phenomenal results of SMS. And specifically, we actually tend to use SMS Bump here at Blend, because one of our clients that we work with SMS Bump, what we are actually able to do is get them a 5,000% return from SMS. So it's really worth looking at this as an option, not only as a welcome flow message, but also more generally of using SMS throughout the rest of your store marketing. And I will come back to SMS a little bit later on as we go. So we've welcomed a customer. We've told them a little bit about us. What we need to do now is we need to show them. We need to show them what it's like to be a customer of our company. And for that reason, reviews and testimonials are really important, and particularly when it comes to email, these work really well. Now, what I personally recommend is that you would have an email like this great one here from Everlane in your welcome flow, because what it does is that it gives that potential customer, it gives them a change in mindset. It makes them think, oh, okay, yes, this could be me. Maybe, oh, wouldn't that be amazing if, look, I did have a pair of jeans that I never wanted to take off. But that is always going to be, that's a pain point, thinking about from the marketing term point of view, but it's a real review from a customer that's in there. It's got that social proof in there. Fantastic. Concise, spot on. Now, what I'm going to say here too is that not only, I'm showing you text-based reviews here, but what I would say is there are some really great apps out there at the moment, particularly one that we've been working recently is called Reviews.io. And what Reviews.io does is actually allows you to share video reviews. And I'm going to come back onto those a little bit later. But what I do want to talk about now is abandoned carts. Now, abandoned carts, I guess if you do a Google search for that right now, the amount of results you guys are going to pull up is going to be phenomenal. But I think my advice and my most crucial piece of advice with actually abandoned carts is here that what you need to do is two things. One is you need to test email, you need to test SMS, and you need to test push notifications. Now, doing all of those at the same time is not going to work. Absolutely not, because it's too much. It's overload. You're going to get people navigating away. But what I would say is that test those at different points. See what works, use it, and then run with it. But I think the absolutely critical thing is here, don't discount. I'll say it again, don't discount. At the moment, we are thinking here predominantly about retention. How do we get that customer to be with us long term? I see this happening again and again and again with abandoned carts, and I'm sure we've all done it and gamified it ourselves. You add something to cart, you wait 24 hours, you get a 10% discount. You know, we've all probably done that. We've all probably had that on our Shopify stores at some moment in time. But the problem with that is that it's a very short-termist view that you're getting that customer into the mindset of. What we need to do with abandoned carts is actually show them, what are they going to miss out on? Where's the value that your brand, your business, your Shopify store can bring them if they don't end up purchasing your product? So sending messages that display that and showing them the value that you add and showing how that you can change their lives or improve their lives is a much better way to use an abandoned cart message. Because ultimately, if I go and grab that 10% discount code, I'm seeing this as a very transactional thing. I'm not seeing this as a relationship. So that is my absolute key advice when it comes to abandoned carts. Don't discount. I think I've probably made myself clear. So I'll probably move on to the next section. Now, just on that kind of short-term versus long-term thing, and what I've actually done on the screen here is share an example of a client site that we actually built a little while back now. But it's actually a really good example of showing the benefits of the long term. Now, what you can see on the screenshot that I've included here of the product page is that you can see reviews, you can see the benefits, and you can also see the ability to subscribe and save. And all of these things are indicating to that potential customer or customer that being a longer term customer has a benefit. You can get a discount if you subscribe and save. You can see that 503 people review this product. So all of those things you can then take, you transplant that into your marketing. And again, you're focusing from the outset in your initial marketing to a customer about retention, getting them for the long term, using that information and helping them become a long and loyal customer. Now, once we've actually come to the point now, we've done the bit, I guess, where we have encouraged retention. And what we need to start thinking about now is actually how we reward it. And this, I would say, is probably where more of the heavy lifting comes in. So when it comes to retention, the first point that I want to talk about here is about loyalty programs. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are probably sitting there going, well, look, okay, in loyalty programs, you're probably thinking of quite a sort of vanilla looking system where you're rewarded with discounts. And what I would say is that, look, we've worked with over 200 Shopify merchants globally. And my experience has been that these do not work for retention. And what I would say here is that the main problem with just doing a discount-based model for rewards is that it encourages gamification. So what I'm saying here is that as part of our work with our partners over at Loyalty Line, we've done a lot of work with merchants whereby we have created a tier-based reward program. And a tier-based reward program is something that you can see on the screen at the moment. Now, what this does is that it essentially gives that customer a reason to shop with you more and more and more and more. And some of the best loyalty programs that I've personally seen are where you are doing one of two things. One is where you essentially have a number of products that aren't available on your store. So essentially unique products that are branded with your logo, branded with your brand, that can't be bought anywhere else, but can be gotten hold of if they are a loyal customer by accumulating points. And another great one that I've seen and I think works really, really well, I've seen it working really well, is about giving your customers charitable donations. So what you're able to do is that after they accumulate some number of points based on a spend or time they've been with you, is then give them an actual donation to a charity of their choice. Now, if you think about this for a moment, think about a discount that you might give, 10, 20, 30%, whatever it might be, or a dollar-based discount. Think about the cost of those products, those free products, or actually a donation. The monetary cost of both of those could actually be the same. And in a lot of cases, when you're giving free product, the cost there is actually lower. But think about the value that that customer places on it. the value is always going to be much higher on something that seems unique, that's, I guess, sort of, not definitely related to transactional. It's that element of surprise. And by doing this can really make that difference to retention. Now, one of the things that I do also want to mention here, just on the subject of obviously loyalty and thinking about loyalty programs, is that one of the things that Loyalty Line have released recently is a feature that actually allows customers to collect and redeem benefits across multiple stores. So if you are a merchant that is a larger merchant or maybe a plus merchant, I definitely think it's worth having a look at that, about how you could tap into that, particularly obviously in the light of thinking about retention. Now, I mentioned reviews a little bit earlier on, and it's really important for me to bring this back up because I'd say, with my experience with Shopify merchants, the biggest downfalls of using reviews is that requesting a review is always done pretty well, but using them is always done pretty poorly. And what I would say is, there's a prime example here. Now, if you are a Shopify merchant that maybe is using some like a video review from reviews.io, if you have that video, what is going to happen in that video? Well, probably it's going to come back to you. You're going to think that's great. Maybe you'll share on social. Okay, fine. But if you have a customer with the product in their hand talking about how great it is, why are you not using that video on your product page? Because ultimately, what you're trying to do on your product page is to show that customer what it's like to be a customer. So if you have that kind of video, put it in your product thumbnails, put it in a particular section of your product page. A great way that you've generated user-generated content that, again, is free, but very, very powerful. And it's giving you the opportunity, again, to show to your customer what it's like to be a long-term customer. And that, for me, is something I think that is definitely underutilized, but is very, very easy to tap into and is actually very cost-effective as well. I would say one of the other things with retention, and particularly rewarding retention, that we don't always think about that carefully, is showing that level of care. And we see a lot of clients recently who have picked up help desk solutions, particularly with Gorgeous. And what I've mentioned here on the slide is that when you have a tool like Gorgeous, it's not actually about sitting there, 24/7 a day, or maybe having different staff members around the world, obviously a chat application, because some of this stuff can actually be automated. And the biggest thing that I would recommend here is that to have a shift in mindset. When we think about customer service, we tend to think about customer service as a cost. We don't think about it as a revenue generator. And for me, that is really one of the things that we need to change our approach with when it comes to customer service. And it's one of the things that the guys at Gorgeous have been very good at demonstrating. Now, if you think, for example, let's say, you have a help desk on your site and you've got a chat, obviously, widget on there too. Let's say, for example, a customer comes and chats to you and says, hey, I've shopped with you guys before. I'm looking for something new recently. Can you help me out? Now, if you have a help desk, what you're able to do is to straight away, based on that person's email address, pull up their previous orders. You've got that at your fingertips to tap into. So if you can see that maybe they bought, the black baseball cap, the red baseball cap, hey, why don't you recommend the green baseball cap to them? Now, I know that's kind of a simplified example, but definitely, that with having that available to you and having access to data in a help desk, it allows you to respond quicker. It's much better than obviously having, an email system that is going to be maybe 3, 4, 5 days to respond. It's real time. If you can't do real time, you can automate it. So definitely have a think about using a help desk as part of your retention strategy, particularly if you're a larger store or if you are a Shopify Plus store, because for me, this is an absolute must. Right, so I want to think a little bit now about past 4 months and kind of thinking about, some of the tools and some of the strategies really that we've seen merchants being used. And I definitely would say that SMS has been one of the biggest winners really for me, because what it's actually done is that it's bringing in this idea of conversational marketing. Now, we work both with SMS Bump and Klaviyo SMS, and we actually recently worked with a jewelry brand who were using SMS Bump to have live SMS conversations. And what they were doing is that they were actually selling or actually having a kind of consultation over SMS about engagement rings. Now, obviously, this was great because it was discreet in the sense that if the groom was wanting to buy a ring for their potential wife, or obviously if the bride was looking to buy a ring for their potential partner as well, then obviously what they could do there is kind of have a very easy conversation back and forth. But the real power here was that by using SMS, once that customer had purchased that engagement ring, they were able to then set up an automated flow that would go out 30 days later that was then going to offer them the opportunity to buy a wedding ring. And obviously the length of time there can be shortened and changed whatever you need to be. But the point is here again is that SMS is a platform a little bit, I guess, like direct mail. When you have a method of communication that is not being utilized as much as it used to, when you do get that letter through the post, or you do get a mail through a post, or you do get an SMS, which, let's face it, guys, if we're using WhatsApp, we're using Messenger or Viber, anything like that, is actually probably more of a rarity. The SMS feels a bit more unique. It feels more personalized. And obviously that will vary where you are around the world watching now. But for me, particularly with US customers and UK customers, and to a certain extent as well some European customers, that's been one of the things that has really had a fantastic drive in terms of sales, but also retention as well. So at this stage then, what I wanted to talk about is we have encouraged retention, we have rewarded retention, and now it's time to lock that in. And one of the most successful ways that we've seen this done over the pandemic period is actually with subscriptions. And I think the main reasoning here is that customers are looking for that certainty. They're looking for regularity. And these are two things that, look, let's face it, all of us guys haven't experienced in our lives. But also when you think about that traditional shopping experience in a brick and mortar store, it's not something, again, that we've been able to tap into. So when it comes to subscriptions, I would say really, for us, the past 2 years, we have seen a massive spike in people using subscription-based purchasing. And when it comes to using it, it can be something that appears, very enticing. But the first thing I'll definitely recommend is to take a step back. Think about what type of subscription is going to work for your brand. So if we think about the various models out there, we've got subscription boxes, we've got subscribe and save, we've got clubs like Freshly Picked, where you're essentially buying into access. But to help you decide on a model that works best, the best thing that I can recommend is to think about the usage of your products. How often is that customer going to use it? How much will they use it? And based on that, then make a decision on the type of subscription model that you like to use. And I'd really recommend taking a look at a report that was published by Recharge called the State of the Physical Subscriptions Report. And what you'll see here is lots of very interesting data about different verticals and the way that subscriptions are used within those different verticals. And for example, 57% of all subscriptions through Recharge are on a monthly basis. And I would say, with using Recharge and of being a Recharge partner for a long while, one of the best things that we've seen actually in terms of aiding retention is to allow specific benefits, like, for example, adding a single purchase onto subscription. So not only do customers love this, that they can add on an extra product, but also it's going to impact on your bottom line because your AOV is going to increase with each of those subscription purchases that goes out. Now, I'm not sort of contradicting myself here, but I guess I want to explain myself a little bit. We're talking about locking in, but it's important to show that flexibility. And you can see on the screen at the moment an example from Native here, and they actually use Recharge as part of their subscription-based program. But what you'll see here is actually a screenshot of the process when a customer wants to cancel. And what they're doing is they're preempting the reasons why that customer might want to cancel. And after this, they then have different forms of marketing that is used to try and win back that customer at that point, but also further on in time. So there's really a great opportunity here to be open and honest with the customer, but also give them lots of information. One of the really powerful things for Recharge at the moment is using a Recharge customer portal. And what this enables a customer to do is essentially to see all of their subscription details in one place, be able to manage that, and really obviously get the best on their subscription going forward. So again, I would really recommend taking a look at that and seeing if that's something that you could implement to obviously, yes, get the lock-in from a subscription, but also show that level of flexibility that you'll need. So at this point then, I actually want to come back to rewards. And I think one of the biggest things that a Shopify merchant can do as a win is to actually more generally make sure that apps integrate together. Now, look, all of you guys will know there are some incredible tools out there. I think we're sort of close on 3,000 apps on the App Store, which is fantastic. But what's even better is when you can actually get those apps to work together, because they have a much bigger impact. And one of the integrations really that's related to locking in is between Loyalty Line and Recharge. So for example, one of the great things you can do with this integration is to actually add a free gift card as part of subscription when a customer hits a particular purchase milestone. So have a think of the last time you had something unexpected delivered to you as part of a standard delivery. Maybe it was a small pack of candy. Maybe it was a free gift. Did it feel good? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it did, which is the reason why I'm kind of saying to you here, look, this is a fantastic way, again, integrate those apps and get that lock-in on retention working for you. And I'm going to talk a little bit more now about the integration subject, because when you actually do integrate your apps, and particularly your subscription app and your email app, it's very important to actually tailor your approach to email. So let's think about a little example for a moment. Let's say I am a subscription customer of a brand, and I happen to be browsing on the site one day a product that is included within my subscription. Now, if I were to then get an email from that company saying, hey, would you like to buy product X that is part of my subscription? I'm probably not going to be too pleased, because I'm like, well, hey guys, look, I buy this from you each month. Did you not know? And one of the really nice things is that if you're using a tool like Klaviyo and you're integrated with Recharge, you can use that data about the people browsing on your site, if they're a subscription customer already, and make sure they don't get emails like that. So there is a ton of data that can be used in these apps, and it's about really making sure that you pull that out and use that then as part of your retention strategy. Okay, now I know I've probably covered a lot of ground here. And what I wanted to do is to just, I guess, kind of run through my recommendations of what I would recommend that you do next in terms of either sustaining your spike or generating your spike. And I would say the first thing is you need to take an analysis of where you are right now. So if you go and download our free growth analysis tool, you'll be able to initially see where you are. The second thing is about understanding your story. What does that data tell you? Where are you now? Why are you there? And off the back of that, then you can then choose those retain and gain strategies that I've mentioned in the webinar today that are going to work best for you. And like with any good process, measure and test, measure and test, measure and test. That is an absolute key with everything that we're doing here. So just in terms of practical actions then, guys, the link for the growth analysis tool is blendcommerce.com/Shopify Compass. That's blendcommerce.com/Shopify Compass. And I'll just obviously invite you guys to take a look at that after the webinar and basically use that to see where you are right now. And at this point then, folks, I think what I'm going to do is ask if we can hand back over to the Shopify team. And what we'll do is take some questions and answers.
Amazing. Well, Adam, thank you so much for the overview. I loved everything that you shared. Very insightful. And I really liked your suggestion about the loyalty program. That is not something that we've covered yet on Shopify Compass. So it's really nice to hear all this new content and also get a recommendation. So it sounds like Loyalty Line is the integration that you probably use most of the time for creating these programs.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Loyalty Line, are our rewards program, loyalty program partner of choice. And the reason we do that is because, again, it's packed with features. And obviously there are some absolutely fantastic integrations, not only for Shopify merchants, but also for Shopify Plus merchants as well.
Yeah. So on that note, do you think a loyalty program works best for certain product types or price points and ranges? What are your thoughts there?
No, it's a really good question, and it's a question that a lot of our merchants ask us. And the answer is actually that when it comes to loyalty programs, we've actually implemented, and we have clients who have loyalty programs across a broad spectrum of actually typical purchase values, but also in terms of verticals as well. So for example, we have worked with a furniture store before that has a loyalty program, because although you may be thinking about buying a couch, the benefit there is that if you can then reward someone for them maybe buying the chair or the table or the dining room furniture that goes with that, essentially then you're building up that loyalty with getting to see themselves as a loyal customer. I think brands that obviously sell apparel, it really is, a great opportunity, but particularly kind of focusing, again, on the sort of the pet brands that I mentioned before. Pet brands are absolutely fantastic with loyalty programs. And the one I was talking about before with the kind of charitable donations, having a pet brand, so maybe you'd say a dog treat brand, that you accumulate points as you buy, and then how you can donate $10 or $20 to a local dog home of your choice. That's fantastic. That gives people that great feeling of, look, this is wonderful. I'm getting something from my dog, but I'm giving back to someone else as well, which works really, really well.
Yeah, and I like what you said. It was very clever. $10 spent on a physical gift versus $10 on a donation. The perceived value there is so much more. So definitely a creative way to use it. And how would you introduce the loyalty program to the, I guess, your audience or your customers?
Yeah, sure. So we tend to work a lot with, again, with loyalty on this front, but what we would tend to do is to kind of have two different strategies. One is that we would have, excuse me, a landing page set up for existing customers so that we can really explain what the loyalty program is about. And also, I think what is very helpful is that if you're able to kind of create an animated video that you can send via email to explain how this loyalty program is going to work. I think one of the biggest tips I would say is that by giving customers a number of points that allow them to get something tangible very quickly is very useful, because that gets the early opt-in from your existing customers. But also when it comes to new customers, is that making sure that you are signposting that and giving them multiple opportunities on your site to sign up. So for example, on your product page, making sure you have a link there that tells them about the rewards program or how many points they're going to get if they were to purchase that product. Equally, again, a great integration between Klaviyo and Loyalty Line is that you can actually make sure that at the top of every single email you send, it can say, hey Dave, you currently have X amount of points for X brand. So making sure that you are using all your different channels to demonstrate what's there with the loyalty program and continuing to do that over time as well.
Yeah, that constant reminder. And something else on a different topic that I really like your recommendation was the website reallygoodemails.com. So I popped in there. So for anybody who, like you said, set up your welcome sequence if you don't have one yet, but lots of great ideas there. I also wanted to ask you, do you have any suggestions on what to include in the first email of the sequence versus maybe the second and the third email?
Yeah, sure. So with the welcome email flow, the first email really needs to be about you as a brand. So think about it, like going on a date. The thing is, when you go on a date, you're probably not going to start talking about, let's move in and get married and have babies and all that kind of stuff. You're probably going to be talking about, look, here's me, here's my job. I really like rollerblading at the weekend, and my favorite cheese is gorgonzola. That's not my favorite cheese, but hey, there we go. But the point is exactly the same things with welcome flow, is that tell them something interesting about your brand and give them one single point of contact, or one single CTA. Don't have a welcome flow that has multiple CTAs for your first email. All you want to do is educate them and get them to be clicking onto your site with that CTA. So that's, I would say, the first one. The second email, I would say, is then using basically a review or a testimonial about your product, because in the first one, you've educated that customer about who you are as a brand. And in the second one, you're starting to say, hey guys, look, actually, if you enter into this relationship with me or enter into this purchase relationship, this is the kind of experience that you're going to get. That would be the second one. Personally, for me, I would then say that the third email, or third or fourth email, is going to be about giving them that personalized offer. So if they have, for example, noted that they're interested in Nike or Canada Goose, or they have a Chihuahua, then you can then obviously give them a personalized recommendation based on that. So you give them the opportunity to learn about you, know a bit more about you, give them the experience of what it's like to be a customer, and then hit them with the offer.
Nice, good ones. And then a general question for you. Somebody wrote in, I started my business just before COVID. What can I do as a new store to gain traction now?
Yeah, great question. I think the main thing I would be saying at the moment here is that when it comes to new stores that have operated recently, I would definitely be thinking about your marketing in terms of lifestyle. And what I mean by that is that when it comes to your social media marketing, obviously there's a great opportunity here to, I guess, hone in on some of the new habits that become available. So, for example, a lot of us are working from home. A lot of us are having to exercise at home. A lot of us are maybe getting more interested in cooking. So if you think about these kind of societal changes and how we're all living and doing things differently, think about that can then impact on your particular brand. So let's say, for example, you're a t-shirt company. Before, maybe you were kind of suggesting, and having images of people wearing your t-shirts out in a park or in a bar or wherever it might be. Maybe you can kind of flip that and say, well, actually, look, maybe you've got pictures of, people wearing your t-shirts, chilling out on the couch, having a party at home, gaming, thinking about that kind of thing, because then it's putting that product into the idea of what that person's lifestyle like is at the moment. I think, when it comes to marketing as well and kind of getting that traction at the moment, e-commerce, of course, is a massive boom. So there is, I guess, a lot of competition, but by personalizing your approach there with that kind of marketing, that can really serve you well. And I think the other thing too is that, if you're thinking about paid marketing at the moment, there are a lot of new channels that have opened up recently. And I think, make sure that you can tap into those at the lower end of the scale to see what could work for you and then kind of scale those up over time.
Yeah, those are really good points. And even as you're saying, making it very relevant, like let's not pretend, your images from last year are probably relevant this year. And I know for us on burst.shopify.com, it's where we have a lot of, background images that people can pull. We've started adding images, if it's a group outside, they're wearing masks, or there's more indoor, working from home. So as always, just being relevant to what people are feeling right now will probably help them envision themselves with your brand.
Absolutely.
And so BFCM is around the corner in 4 months, but I know for everyone who's a store owner, it's already top of mind now. What are your thoughts of BFCM with Black Friday, Cyber Monday during the holiday season? What are your predictions or thoughts for it this year?
Well, I mean, I think before kind of talk about predictions, I would definitely say if you haven't started thinking about it, start thinking about it now. I think August is actually a really great time to start planning before the craziness gets in. Particularly, again, if you are working with an agency or you're going to be looking for a freelancer to maybe help you with your Shopify store, September, October does get very busy very quickly. But I think, Skita, in terms of our predictions this year, a lot of people are saying, well, look, sales have been pretty high. People have been seeing kind of Black Friday, Cyber Monday level sales throughout the year. Will it be the same again? My thought that it absolutely will. And the reason I think that is because if we think about, obviously, the spending habits for now, people have essentially been replacing their brick and mortar purchases with actually online purchases. So there's been that big shift of people going out to a mall, going out to a local high street and buying those things that they would typically buy then at that point, which I think, really kind of explains that increase in the sales. If we think then and shift, obviously, about Black Friday, Cyber Monday, we've got two factors playing here. One is that, look, everyone's going to be looking, obviously, for that great deal, ready for, obviously, for Thanksgiving, for Christmas. But the other thing here is that on top of that, you've also had this shift of brick and mortar and physical sales into new sales. So you've got both of those factors this year. We didn't have that last year. So in my mind, I would really predict that BFCM is going to be even bigger than 2019, 2020, really because of those factors.
Yeah, and I've definitely heard some stores, well, of course, some have closed, or maybe some are choosing not to even open, right? It's too crowded for the environment that we're in. So your online store, make sure it's ready. And I think that's a really good point for anyone who wants to work with an agency. You probably have already, I'm sure in previous years, had people reach out to you, the month of, and you're already a little bit late to the game at that point. So I'm sure you have clients reaching out to Blend Commerce as we speak, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, last year, I think we essentially kind of closed our, I guess, virtual doors and the last week in September. because we were essentially booked then all the way through till the end of January. So, that's just, kind of give an example. And obviously this year, I think it will probably be even busier. And certainly, kind of speaking to other sort of Shopify partners, I know that they're also kind of expecting the same thing. So yeah, it's definitely a good time to start having those conversations. And even if you're not working with an agency, start that planning now. Because, for example, if you're using Facebook ads, a great thing to do with Black Friday to avoid paying those high ad costs is that you can generate a load of acquisition traffic to get people into a retargeting audience in sort of August and September, and then retarget them in November when the acquisition cost in Black Friday Cyber Monday is much higher. So even doing things like that, putting that into place now is definitely a smart move.
Yeah, great. Even if you're working on your own, there's things that you can start doing. And I'll take this time, I know we're almost near the top of the hour, so I will mention that starting next week on Shopify Compass, we're doing a very, very specific Black Friday Cyber Monday series. It's going to be going on every week for the next 4 months until Black Friday Cyber Monday and the holidays. So each week we've got experts that'll be teaching you all different aspects of it. So very timely for you to kick us off into our series, Adam. So thank you so much for everything you shared today.
No problem at all. It's been a pleasure, and thanks for having me.
And we have all your links in the chat. So for everybody, blendcommerce.com/Shopify Compass was the link. Make sure you have that. Please fill out the feedback survey. We also would love to hear what you think. The replay will be available in a few days on shopifycompass.com.